Sean, I'm so fascinated to get your perspective. I saw you earlier today. We were at
Hi, buddy.
practice today.
Hey, buddy.
Hanging out, talking to DeMar DeRozan, talking to Keegan Murray, and talking to Mike Brown. A few minutes later, we're, talking a little bit. I'm like, hey, see you later, Sean. Hey, maybe I'll see you in Stockton Sunday. I'm walking to my car and I see the alert from Shams that Mike Brown had been let go. What do you make of how this transpired, first of all, before getting your reaction to the decision to move on from Mike?
Yeah, I think I've witnessed a lot since being around this team for the first time since, '01 was the first time in any media capacity, and obviously growing up in Sacramento and, being a Kings fan before that. But this is about as strange as it gets, guys. I mean, I don't want anybody to hear that and think that it's, completely out of the ordinary to fire a coach after a start like the Kings have had in the middle of a 5-game losing skid. But and certainly, guys, I mean, there's been a lot of chatter of late throughout the league, throughout media. I know fans have speculated, and we were hearing stuff. I was hearing a lot of stuff over the past couple days about how crucial this Pistons game was, and I always kind of scoffed at it because, like, whether it comes down to one game, I don't care if it's the Pistons, the Lakers, whoever it is, you don't. No one should go in there and say, "Hey, if somebody, if this team wins or loses, if they lose, they're going to lose their coach. If they win, he's going to be safe." Like, it should never come down to one game because at that point you've already made up your mind. But going into the gym today, Mike Brown is on the head obviously at practice, running practice. His coaching staff is there. Thought the only thing noteworthy of it was Domantas Sabonis isn't there. He's obviously not attending practice today. At that point, you think, okay, Mike Brown is going through practice, and now he's going to coach. He'll get on the flight, and he will coach in LA tomorrow night against Lakers. If the thing that baffles me, I'm not saying he got screwed and got fired. Like, no, I'm not saying that, because that's why they get paid a lot of money. No one gets screwed. But it is very wild, and I feel a disservice to a human being to have them go out there and answer questions in front of the media, run a practice, and then not even 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes later, you're blown up and you are now fired. Now you've made the decision to fire somebody. That, to me, is very puzzling. It's unfortunate that it played out that way. I'm sure if there was a look, it's easy for someone like us to sit here and say, oh, they shouldn't have done that. And look, there is a decorum that people would like to have. But at the end of the day, it's not something that either of us have ever done, where we have to sit somebody down in professional sports, mind you. I'm not saying in corporate America. I'm not saying in the retail job or whatever, but to sit down and fire when you're given the green light, or when whoever's making the decisions have to come to the decision and do so, you have to react appropriately as soon as you have all your ducks in a row. And I just find it odd that the ducks were in a row to where you'd finally let him know after practice, after he's spoken to the local media about his struggling team and the continued mistakes that they've made on and off the floor. So baffling, puzzling, whatever word you want to attach to it. Sign me up. I'll co-sign that. That certainly would qualify.
I'm so glad you're making my feelings feel like validated, because I was feeling all these things, and it's not even this, oh, because I like him, or because it's truly because of all those things you just mentioned. And then you think about the timing of this in the season. And Deuce and I sat here in the beginning of this an hour ago, and we're going, just why right now? What is that? What is the point? Like, did they get better today by firing Mike Brown? I think we can confidently say no, because they still have all their flaws, unless all of a sudden just tomorrow every rotation's going to change and it just somehow it's going to take over this league. So I guess that's where I still stand, and I can ask you, do you have a why now at all? Like, can you answer that?
Well, I think the why now really began with this holiday homestand, this 5-game holiday homestand, which clearly they came into playing a lot better than they had. I mean, it wasn't that long ago we're talking about how they kind of turned the corner a little bit, showing that the scoring was up, and some of the things defensively they'd been working on, they had ended up middle of the pack, and scoring efficiency was there in the top 10, and kind of rounding a corner. DeRozan was back healthy again, but it's also coming at the expense of some lower echelon opponents, and sometimes you have to find your get right games. Certainly opponents that have come into Golden One Center over these holidays have found their get right games. I mean, you talk about JJ Redick saying that the favorite win of the season came just against the Kings the other night. You see the Pacers, who came in much like the Kings, trying to find themselves, trying to turn their seasons and their fortunes around, and they get an absolute statement win in a game where Tyrese Halliburton, the former King, didn't really play that well, and they found a way to absolutely take it to the Kings. And then you get the Pistons, who come in here fresh off a win against the Lakers. They've got some big wins under their belt, young team looking for any molecule of success, and they go out there and find a way to gut out a win against the Kings in just crazy fashion. And it shows to me what's like that the NBA is a cold business. The NBA is a lot can happen in 24 hours. And you go from a game where you're feeling so low against the Pacers and you're thinking this is the newest low. It's a reminder that it can get lower, and it did. And that Pistons loss, I think, had everybody to a man just looking around going, what just happened? And the funny thing is, and I don't know how much you guys dissected that loss last night, but it almost leaves you like the Doc Rivers meme, kind of speechless as to how things continue to happen. And ultimately, look, it's the nature of the business. There's a fall guy. The coach is always the fall guy when it comes to wins and losses, or at least especially for losses. And no one's going to feel sorry for Mike Brown. He gets to not coach for a while and make a boatload of money in the meantime. So, no one's going to cry for him. But at the same time, it's you get to a point where it's like that can be a hard thing to do, is blame coaching with so much going wrong. You point to the roster imbalance. You point to the little details. There's a lot wrong with this team. It wasn't just coaching, but sometimes it takes a coaching move to finally turn around. Mike Brown would be the first person. He was talking last night about how the sting of a lower low than what was with the Pacers in the loss to the Pistons, sometimes that is what it'll take to maybe turn things around and get guys mad and get them to lock in. So you couple that with Mike Brown, you go to the Lakers, a team that's kind of had some ownage on you this year. It's going to make for some interesting times, that's for sure.
The other curious part of this whole thing, right? We talk about the timing, how he was informed, but also, let's not lose sight of the fact they did give him an extension over the offseason. Like 6 months ago, they gave him a raise for this year and then tacked on those 2 additional years to the deal. Did you get the sense that his leash was going to be short, even though he got the extension over the offseason? Because this is not typical, right? To get an extension and then like lose your job 6 months later.
Right. And yeah, and I don't care how rich an owner is. No owner is looking to just, piss away that amount of money. No, I didn't think that the leash was going to be short per se, but I think once you get to a point in the season where things haven't looked right, we've talked about it a lot, and I think a lot of people, it's natural to go back 2 years ago and point to that, because you have people who, yeah, play that way, do that, and it's not that easy. Personnel changes, even though you largely have the same personnel. The league changes. The way people look at the Sacramento Kings that year compared to this year changes. They were, you guys know as well as I do. They were catching some teams. People were looking at the Kings as a cakewalk, and they came out, run you out the gate. You don't want to run with them. They'll collect some wins, and it didn't really lead to any postseason success. Sure, you snapped the playoff streak, but you didn't make it out of the first round. It was an epic matchup with the Warriors. Lost to arguably a more experienced, arguably a better team, but certainly a more experienced championship caliber team in the Warriors that year. And you weren't ready. You're hoping to build off that. Well, people started looking at you different. Can't take the Kings for granted anymore. They're now a contender. They're now this player. They're going to go out and they bet on their success. They doubled down. You can argue whether or not that should have happened. But certainly this year, in the addition of DeMar DeRozan, make no mistake, fans understand there were some high expectations.
Yeah.
How many media members, people around the league were looking at the Kings as players in the West this year, and arguably a 50-win team trying to get better from where they were last year. And clearly that is not where they're headed right now, barring some miraculous turnaround. So this team is what it is right now. And, ticket prices don't get any cheaper. Funny things happen around the holidays. And again, we can talk about the timing and all that stuff. this owner in Vivek Ranadive has a lot of experience in firing head coaches. It's kind of what is his tenure has been as an owner of this team, among some other really good things that have happened. But a lot of the same old, we're moving on to another coach, we're moving on to another coach, and a lot of this redundancy. And I think that's what makes the timing so puzzling in terms of how they did it today at practice. Because had they done it this morning before practice, had they done it last night, late last night, I don't think we're talking about the same thing. Surely, I think they might still talk to people that would say, "Hey, it wasn't Mike Brown's fault. Why'd he get fired?" But you wouldn't have this puzzlement as to how they
Yeah.
did it,
Yeah.
why they did it, why they chose now to do that. And because they've had the experience of firing so many people as an organization, I would have thought that they would have not done it this way. I don't want to say botched because, again, not having been in a role like that in my life, I don't know what it's like to,
Yeah.
go through that. But people I've talked to, other coaches who have gotten fired in these past hours that I've talked to, all of them are like, "Wow, that's kind of cold to have him go out there and have to answer for things and then get fired." It wasn't after a game. It was after practice. You're putting in your game plan for the next day.
And he talked to the media for about 16 minutes after
Yeah.
practice.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, what does this mean for someone like De'Aaron Fox? Because I think so many people have the mixed messages of like, oh, last night after the Pistons game, Mike Brown just went in on him. And I mean, criticized parts of his game that I thought were absolutely valid as anyone that knows basketball. And De'Aaron didn't come out and have the best post-game presser. But then you're seeing today also how much De'Aaron liked Mike Brown. What does this mean for De'Aaron's future? And does he trust the organization, or is this like did he know it was going to happen? Like, do you have any information on that?
I don't, but I can say this. I mean, look, De'Aaron Fox wanted Mike Brown as a head coach.
Yes. Okay.
He when he first got here, when he extended, the messaging was very much the same. Certainly within that locker room, Mike Brown has his critics. I mean, I'm not going to, I won't name them, but he certainly has critics within that locker room, and they may have grown louder over the past several days. I'll say this: I haven't shared this anywhere else, but last night after the game, as you guys know, I tend to get to the locker room very, very quickly. um, and in the hallway leading up to the locker room, after Mike Brown and De'Aaron Fox already spoken to the media, um, some were still kind of waiting to see if Trey Lyles would come to the interview room as opposed to speak in the locker room. He did not. He did not. He ended up speaking in the locker room. But I get to the locker room right when it opens, and in the hallway, Mike Brown was speaking with Rasay, and they were having a decent conversation, enough to where it wasn't contentious. It wasn't anything like that. And De'Aaron Fox, who had just finished up his media session in the interview room, walks out into the hall, sees and Mike and De'Aaron Fox hug. So, like, you're not hugging a guy that you're looking to kick the hell out of the building. So,
Yeah.
in terms of relationship, obviously Deuce was there at practice today. You saw, obviously, the moment we all saw when you could practically hear a pin drop despite basketballs dribbling in the background, where Mike goes up and talks to De'Aaron. And if you're good at reading lips, you can kind of see it had to do with last night. And that looked to be an interesting conversation. I don't want to say odd. It was odd that it wasn't really a conversation. There was a lot of head nodding from Fox. It was obviously something that Mike had to say, and then he went and spoke about it to us after practice was over. I don't think there's a cynic alive that's going to say De'Aaron Fox marched into Monty McNair's office and said this guy has to go. So I think the wheels were set in stone, or was set in motion in the days leading up to the Pistons game. I think the chatter was real, and I think there was just ultimately, when you get enough people, whoever the ultimate decider is, in my opinion, that ends up being Vivek Ranadive. Once you make the decision, you have to make the decision, and yeah, it's just unfortunate the way that played out.
So now it sounds like Doug Christie is going to be the interim head coach, which is not exactly the easiest task for anybody to take over a team in this situation, trying to salvage a season, turn things around with expectations. What's your thought on Doug and what he has to do and try to accomplish here?
Yeah, I love Doug, as you guys do, as a person. as a competitor. He's someone we've all known for a very long time, going from, radio host, analyst to assistant coach. He got to scratch that itch of, he has such a strong desire of wanting to be a head coach in the league, and being able to scratch that itch in the summer league, I think was a big opportunity for him, and something that he embraced with two hands. And make no mistake, he was critical in that team. He wore some of those losses in the summer league rather hard. And I cringe at it a little bit, because he's taking over a team with such high expectations. A lot of vets on the team, and he's a vet, and now he's stepping in ahead of the associate head coach, Jay Triano, who was Mike's head coach. We'll see if I would imagine that, I haven't heard any different. I would imagine the coaching staff remains intact.
Okay.
I think Alvin Gentry is certainly going to be a resource in this whole process as well, using his expertise as someone who's still within the organization. But I'm happy for Doug that he finally gets to become an NBA head coach, albeit an interim basis. It's something that, if all goes well, he gets an opportunity to probably secure that role going forward. He has a lot of fans within the organization, as you guys know, and they're littered throughout that organization. People want to see Doug Christie do well. There are people who want to see Doug Christie as a head coach. Long before this Mike Brown situation ever became a hire in Sacramento, before Mike Brown ever became to Sacramento, there were people pushing for Doug Christie. So I'm intrigued to see it. It's unfortunate that it comes the way it does. And if I'm Doug Christie, and look, there's no perfect situation to, if you're a coach, you've got to be able to take your opportunity when you can get it, no matter who it's with. When you want to be an NBA head coach, doing so in the interim basis, it adds about 1,000 times more weight to it. Some could say it's a pressureless situation. He won't. I don't think he will say that, because now you're auditioning for a job that ultimately you want to keep, and you're auditioning for a future job in that as well. People might now look at you a little bit different. So I'm curious to see what it looks like. I'm curious to see how players respond to it. It's going to be some interesting weeks ahead for us.
I think what you just said there is it. Like, what's it look like in a few weeks? Because you mentioned De'Aaron and his relationship with Mike. There's so much talk about De'Aaron's future in Sacramento after Rich Paul's visit here. Yeah, I mean, what could this team look like by February 6th when the deadline's here? Is it blown up? Is it tweaked? Is Fox still here? Is Sabonis? I mean, I just feel like everything's on the table at this point. Am I right on that?
I mean, it should be. I mean, you make the move to relieve the head coach. That doesn't help your roster imbalance. You're still very short as a team. You're still missing a lot of physicality. Maybe there's a rotationally, or a different train of thought that comes with Doug Christie coming in there. But I think there's only so much you can do from within your roster. I think it's incumbent upon this front office to go out and make moves. But I also do wonder, Deuce. I mean, it comes at a time where you just let go of your head coach. You have some concerns about your future with De'Aaron Fox, whether he wants to remain in Sacramento, seeing that maybe the Kings aren't positioned well to succeed throughout the NBA, and he wants to go at a place where he can find success. He's already got the dollar amount. Now he wants to go and find the success. You could argue, and we always talk about, for right, wrong, and different, Vivek Ranadive always has his say in these matters as well. So it's a collective, and that's not unique to Sacramento. It's like that everywhere. But if you have a front office who just let go of the head coach, and I wonder how much freedom is given. Like, let's just play a hypothetical here. If you're going out there and you find a deal and it's, hey, we need to get something for De'Aaron Fox, do you have the green light to trade him? Do you have a green light to trade? Let's put him aside. Do you have a green light to trade someone like Sabonis? Do you have a green light to go and trade your precious draft capital to go out and find some help for this team? Like, what's the too much is too much in terms of trust for this front office to go out and do it? Again, that's just speculation, but you did just let go of the head coach. There's really nobody else left to blame anymore, except for your front office. So now, whatever heat the front office might have felt before the firing of Mike Brown, I only imagine gets even hotter going forward. And
Mhm.
so I wonder what the freedom is for somebody like Monty McNair to go out there and do a balls to the wall, swing for the fences type of move, or even a smaller move. And you just have to make sure that your owner is on board with it, and will they give you the freedom to do it? So it's I think it's always that way, like it or not. Like, I think you always have the freedom as long as you have enough people signing off on it. I don't think it's literally one guy's idea and he goes out and does it. I think there is a temperature of the room crowdsourcing kind of thing within the organization, but I just wonder how much harder now that is to do once you fired the head coach.
Sacramento, man. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
Ooh, that
It's
line.
wild, man.
That line
It's
right
wild.
there.
Sean, I appreciate your perspective, man. Thanks for hopping on last
Yeah.
second. I know you're going to be busy and
Have fun being busy.
eager to hear what you learn in the coming days, man.
Heading down to LA, which I didn't think I'd be doing this weekend. So
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
we'll hear from Doug Christie. We'll hear from hopefully Monty McNair. I think it's interesting that the move was made and we didn't really get to hear from anybody yet. So
Yeah.
again, timing is everything, and that's again one of the things that, like, all right, we're going to make a move. We haven't heard from the GM yet, so hopefully that's something we'll be able to get in the coming days. Hopefully, maybe as early as tomorrow.
Get that inside scoop.
All right, Sean. I'm sure we'll be talking soon. Thanks, man. I appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.